and welcome back to my channel. Today we have a very special guest, my husband Nathan.
Hello!
And today we are going to be having a conversation about the difficulties and challenges of organizing with a spouse. I started thinking about this topic when I read a post on a professional organizing page that I'm a part of. And someone had posted about how difficult it was organizing with their husband. And there was a lot of comments on this post, and after reading the comments, I came to a few realizations. First, I have a wonderful husband.
Aww.
Who, despite his flaws, is relatively organized. Second, there is a real need for more communication when organizing with spouses. I heard this question in their comments. How can I help my husband become more organized? Nathan and I have not been married for very long, but we have learned a few important things we'd like to share with you. Let's start with the basic question. Nathan, are you good at organizing?
Well, I think it depends on what you mean by organizing. I am very organized when it comes to systems and schedules. Have a place for everything, and I'm always efficiency. But when it comes to like my stuff, not really. Growing up, my room was always the place where things I didn't want to deal with yet just kind of got put. Like, oh, I want to do a project with that sometime. Just put it in the room. Just goes over there. So it ended up kind of being a mess.
Nathan, how do you view stuff?
Well, I grew up in a household that was very money conscious when it came to our purchases. And with that also meant that we didn't try to get rid of things that we might end up needing later. So for me, objects are things that might be useful in the future, and they're important to make sure we're not wasting money by just simply throwing out things. A second factor that influences my view on the stuff I own is the memories that are involved with it. I have a really, really strong memory, and thus most of the items I own, I remember who gave it to me or where I got it or why I got that item in the first place. And it can be hard for me to move on from items because they're part of my story.
So I have a different view of stuff, and that's kind of where there's conflict. My view of stuff stems primarily, I believe, from a life event that happened when I was 13. My family had a house fire, and everything in the house was destroyed. And how my mom kind of helped us cope with it, she had this thing. She would just say, "It's just stuff." And thankfully no one was hurt in the fire. So when she was saying it's just stuff, it was really because we were so thankful that no one was hurt, and material possessions are replaceable. People are not. So I just grew up with that mindset of it's just stuff, and I still say that today. You can vouch for that. If something breaks, it's just stuff. So that's where my view on stuff really stems from. Because of our different views on possessions, we had some conflict. Here's an example. Nathan has fidget toys because he has to be doing something with his hands all the time. So when I first moved into his apartment, there was fiddle toys everywhere, and it would drive me nuts. I would be like, why is this over there? And then a little while later, I'd find it over there. I don't know. It still baffles me. Anyway, I came to him we need to talk about the fiddle toys.
But I wouldn't let you throw them away.
No, you wouldn't. So I got a Dollar Tree, small little box, and I said, all your fidget toys need to be in here and stay in, this is their corral. This is their spot. And so that really helped, because when we found them laying around, we would just put them in there.
Another story of conflict that we ran into came up when Emily wanted to reorganize a space. And she'd want to get rid of the storage containers or the organizing bins that were already there and go out and buy new ones. And I'd sit there and be like, why do we need to spend money when we already have organizing bins? Yes, it's not the greatest system, but it's working well for me.
It was not working for me.
So we had to work through that as well because our differing views on stuff cause conflict.
What have you learned about organizing since we've been married?
I think there's probably two main things that I've realized about organizing since we got married. At first, when you asked me to get rid of an item, for me it was always a debate between, do I want to have this potentially useful item or get rid of it? And that always seemed like a clear answer. Keep the potentially useful item. But as we've worked together, I've come to realize the value of empty space. That when you have a spot in your house that's empty, there's sometimes a really nice refreshing feel, but more importantly, that's a space that you can use for something else. It has potential and possibilities, and there's value in having that empty space. So now it's no longer a decision of item or not item. Now it's, do I want this item or do I want the empty space I'd get by getting rid of this item? And that was really a revolutionary mindset for me. I think the second thing that I learned through our marriage is that I don't need the physical object around to keep the memory. In fact, oftentimes, if I simply share the memory with you or anyone, I tend to be able to feel a lot better with getting rid of that item now because the memory continues on.
I also have learned a lot about organizing through being married. First, my husband was not going to become organized overnight, as much as I wish, but things take time. Things take time. And another thing was that he really wanted someone to share the memory with before he passed it on. So he really wanted me to sit down with him and him explain the memory, and then he felt way more comfortable getting rid of that thing. I found myself being really annoyed that when he did go through his stuff, he didn't get rid of as much as I thought he should get rid of. But then as I'm going through my own memorabilia stuff, I realized that I too keep a lot of stuff that later when I go through, I'll be like, why did I keep this? But I think it has to do with the more you separate or distance yourself from a certain time period in your life, like high school, when you graduate college and you're moving on with your life, when you go through things from high school, it's not going to seem as important to keep all of the memory stuff from high school.
You also started with a different amount of possessions than I did. Because of your house fire, you had nothing before the age of 13. Well, I still had items that had been on my dresser since I was 5. They had always been there. And they were almost a comfort to me that you didn't deal with.
Nathan, what advice do you have for wives who are frustrated by the way their husbands handle organization?
Well, I think it really probably comes down most to just understanding your spouse. What you have to understand, why are they not wanting to be organized? When it comes to like getting rid of items, you need to know if they want to save an item because of the memories attached or because they might use it to repair something later. If you assume it's one way and it turns out to be the other, you're not going to make any headway by trying to encourage them to get rid of it if you don't fully understand. And with fully understanding your spouse, you need to understand what kind of organizational systems work for them. Not everything that works for you is going to work for your spouse. Some people find having a lot of items around and being a maximalist very comforting. They feel more secure there. And if you just assume that minimalizing everything in their life is going to make them feel better because it makes you feel better, you're going to not make any progress. But on the flip side, I think for the less organized spouse, you really need to give your spouse a chance with their organizational systems. I've discovered a lot of improvements in my life by simply compromising and trying out some of your suggestions to see how they go. And I think it's important that I don't become stuck in my ways of doing things and refuse to ever try to give your insight and chance, because you know a lot of things that I don't know.
But that also goes like, if the more organized spouse decides to implement a new system and it doesn't end up working for the other spouse or even like the kids in the family, right? Then you need to readdress it and make sure that you put a system in place that everyone can understand and do. So to get back to the question at the very beginning, how to help my husband become more organized, here are our list of tips to help you.
First, communicate both ways with your spouse about how you view the items you have and what your goals are for your spaces in your home. Try to understand where they're coming from.
Second, share how you feel. Remember, you are on the same team.
Third, take small steps. Habits are hard to break, so it's going to take time for a person to fully adopt and agree with what you're trying to convince them of.
And fourth, create systems that work for both of you. If you create a system and it doesn't work for one of you, switch it up and try to find a system that will work for both of you. Remember, working with a spouse is like working with a client. I don't get the only and final say. I can't expect them to agree with me on everything, so compromise. How have you found ways to compromise with your spouse, roommate, or sibling?
We don't know everything, so comment down below with your stories because it might help other people out.
And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and go watch some more videos. They'll be linked over here. Bye!
Bye!
Our marriage was gonna be broken by your fiddle toys! Okay, ready?